Hello. Right, it seems I'm live. This has got a lot more technical since the last time that I did a live video on Facebook. So, hello everybody, I'm Alex, and this is the first week of the clinics that we have been talking about on the page for the last couple of weeks. So, I'm holding 4 weeks of clinics every Tuesday night at 7:30. And they are in response to the COVID-19 lockdown and the pandemic that we're currently all experiencing together. So there are lots of information that's around, and there are lots of varying experiences. So we're all in this pandemic. It's the first time that we've had such a thing, but our reactions to it are very different. So I thought I'd do some online clinics to answer any questions and share some information that I've got in response to that. So if you're watching, do say hello so I know who I'm talking to. That's always nice. I can see a couple of you saying hi. Hi, Lex. I say Lex, that's not your real name, is it? Hi, Richard. Hi, Danny. Kids fast asleep. We are lucky, so I'm hoping that mine stay fast asleep. My youngest went down at 6 o'clock and he's already been awake for a feed since, so I'm hoping that it lasts another half an hour and I can just stay with you guys for the duration. Glad you made it there. That's awesome. You've been wanting to make quite a few, haven't you? And it's the first one that I think you've been able to get to. So just give it another minute or so and just see if anyone else comes on. I'll just talk a little bit more about the clinics and about myself as well. So if you've never met me, I know that you three, we've had quite a lot of conversations. Alexa, that's it. Is it Alexia or Alexa? So yeah, for those that are watching the replay or those that join later, I'm Alex. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice, and I practice in Hull, but I do sessions online as well. So stress and anxiety is what we're going to talk about today, and that's often around in my private practice, and particularly that's what I'm picking up on a lot as a response to the pandemic that we're currently experiencing. So I thought that would be good to have for the first week. The other weeks are unfolding, so there's another 3 weeks after this week. They're unfolding and very much based on what people talk to me about. So the responses that I get to the newsletters that I send out in the group that I have and on the main Facebook page as well. I'm hoping that I'm able to confirm when she sends over some details that I will be interviewing a lady called Sari Taylor for our next one next week. Now she practices the something called the 3 principles, which I'm not going to talk about because I've only just started reading about them, but she trained at the Manchester Institute with me in psychotherapy, and then she later went on to study the 3 principles, which she says have been life-changing, and now she specialises in anxiety. So I'm hoping that she sends me over some details, which will be the confirmation on my part that she's going to join us next week. So that's really exciting, so we'll have that for you as well. Hi Stella, Kim and Claire, thank you for joining us. So like I said, today is going to be about stress and anxiety, and I've picked 3 questions out from the emails and the main Facebook page that really cover a lot of the themes that have been coming through in conversation. So question 1, and I'll be trying to answer these with the content that I have as well, is I've had anxiety for a few years now. I've been seeing a therapist and I'm doing much better, but I'm worried I'm going to struggle to do the things I've recently relearned, like go to the shop. Do you have any advice? So I think that people that have experienced anxiety outside of the pandemic are anxious about being able to get back out. So when it's been social elements to their anxiety, like eating in restaurants and going to the shops and seeing people, and those very performance-based anxieties, that there's a few people that have come back and said that they're worried about how they're going to get back on the horse, so to speak. So hopefully I'll be able to cover some of those as well. Another one is, I feel like mainly I'm doing okay, so why do pangs of anxiety come from nowhere? And the third one that I've picked is, I've realised that my life before lockdown was way off balance. I'm now anxious about having to go back into that. What can I do? So those people that may have seen the feed that I posted on the main page the other day, which was like, how are you finding lockdown? Like using 5 words, what your experience is. And some people have put loving it, loving family time, and really, great opportunity. And this person particularly was sharing how they are experiencing it as an opportunity. However, the forced slowdown in life has made them aware of how off balance their life pre-pandemic was, pre-lockdown. And now they're worried about going into it because there's elements to that before life that they no longer want to engage in. So what do you do with that? And how can you be mindful of your experiences of lockdown, the things that you enjoy and the things that you were able to take from it, and take that out into life as it was before. So do ask any questions if you've got any as we do this live. And if you're watching replay, I will, if I don't get a chance to answer the live questions, I'll go back to them and I'll answer them afterwards. And if you're watching on replay, do let me know that it's a replay, because it just helps me identify them as I go back and keep track of whose I've answered and whose I haven't. Right, so stress and anxiety then. So we experience stress and anxiety very similar in the body. So we have physiological symptoms, we have emotions, and we have cognitions that run alongside those as well. Sometimes people are more aware of their physiology, some are more aware of their mood, and some are more aware of their cognitions. I rarely meet people that are, kind of aware of all 3 of them. But what those 3 tend to do then is influence our behaviour. And that's where the problems can start. So if somebody is experiencing anxiety, for example, and it makes them dizzy or lightheaded and racing heart, their behaviour may be influenced by avoiding certain situations that do that. So where there's 3 elements to the experience of, the 4th being the behaviour tends to be where they all filter through, and that's where the impact is often known by the individual or a client. Like, I know that I avoid this, or I know that when I'm in a room of people, I always make sure that I've got my back to the wall. And they're the safety behaviours that we engage in to try and reduce the anxiety. So whilst I'm going to list some symptoms of stress, and when I do this, I want to invite you to think about how well you know your own symptoms of stress. So I've mentioned the physical components, such as racing breath or feeling like you're short of breath, that experience where you don't feel like you're getting enough oxygen into your lungs and you find that you're taking deeper, bigger breaths than normal, increased heart rate, interrupted sleep, digestive issues, such as, kind of frequently needing to go to the toilet, and tensions. So that can be anywhere in your body, but it's often felt in the head, in the neck and the shoulders and the back. So sometimes not always, but sometimes when I'm doing my risk assessment with a client that is stressed or anxious, one of the questions that I ask is, do you suffer with any physical complaints such as blood pressure, digestive issues? Because what it tells me is that whilst they may not be aware of their physiology, and the links that it has to stress and anxiety, that if they are prompted by the question to give me some feedback, that's very informative. Has something happened to live? Share the link. Can can you all still see me? I think Danny's just posted something which is making me think that something's happened and I may have gone offline. If someone could just comment and let me know. So are you aware of your own stress symptoms? And if you are, what do you do with that awareness? So as we continue to talk about the stress and anxiety, I want you to think about what it is that you're aware of, so your own body, your own emotions, your mood and your cognitions, and how that may filter back into your behaviour. But what do you do with it? So do you engage in safety behaviours? So the awareness that you have, do you put it to use and you avoid situations? Or do you put it to use and give your body what you need? Are you able to use it as a telltale sign? Or do you find that more often than not you avoid it? So they're really, really important questions to maybe take pen and paper and write them down or watch it on replay and see how you answer those. So when we experience stress, it can be because we're overwhelmed, because something important is at stake, when we are denying our body and we're not listening to it, so we are overwhelmed or overworked, or we need to take a break, we need to slow down. And if we don't listen to our bodies and we think, the deadline is more important, for example, then we are going to experience those stress symptoms. Anxiety, on the other hand, is more about unhelpful thought patterns. So when I talk about those three elements, the cognitions, the emotions, and the physiology, anxiety isn't always experienced first with the cognitions, but always starts with the cognitions. It's unhealthy thought patterns and beliefs that then filter through those others and then to the behaviour. And it's when our body feels as though it is under threat and in danger. So anxiety on a whole is an evolutionary survival mechanism, which if you experience anxiety then tells you that your body is working properly. However, what happens over a long period of time is that can almost become an automatic response. So when a body experiences something over a period of time and consistently, it starts to anticipate even when it isn't actually in your reality. So if you're experiencing anxiety over a long period of time, your body may anticipate a threat even when it's not there. So then you continue to feel those symptoms even though they're not there. And that's often what brings people into the office. Both stress and anxiety have an impact on the body. So they affect our mood and our emotions. So we may experience, and other people actually may experience, that we are more irritable, that we're more emotional, so we're quick to feel upset or to feel angry, and we may find it difficult to concentrate. It affects our behaviour, so we may become obsessive in order to reclaim a little bit of control. So I think, often people go, I'm a little bit OCD. Whereas I know that that's quite a light-hearted comment and no harm is intended by that actually somebody that does have OCD has very ruminating and thoughts and obsessive thoughts and patterns of behaviours that is all about managing that threat. So they feel the sense of threat to such a degree that the obsessive compulsive behaviour comes from that. We may use avoidance techniques. So when I talk about safety behaviours, maybe standing with your back against the wall, avoiding going to the shop or going to restaurants, or only frequenting the restaurants that you're familiar with and avoiding the ones that you don't, because the belief system in that is that my anxiety doesn't happen when I feel safe or when I go to that place or when I'm with my best friend Sarah. So our belief system has an impact on that as well. And we may withdraw from our social systems, which actually has a bigger impact than what you may initially think, because we're social creatures and we tend to feel very out of sync when we don't have our social networks around us, which is another reason why I've chosen stress and anxiety as the first week, because going to work and going out and seeing our friends is a huge part of why we feel okay a lot of the time and why we may feel out of sync now. I'm just checking the comments. Everyone's saying that you can still see me and I'm still live. That's good. Right, so then our nervous system. So hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline are released, and over a period of time, they can start to impact our organs. What happens is, more commonly, people are aware of the fight and flight reaction or response to anxiety. There are some others, but for this purpose, I'm just going to stick with those two. So when I mentioned earlier that anxiety is an evolutionary response, our need to fight or flight was real when we were living in caves. It is still today, but we constantly needed to be on alert. And so our body, when in fight or flight, when our sympathetic nervous system was activated, which is what manages our fight or flight and our survival strategies, it would draw all the energy away from the organs which aren't needed in order to survive. So that means that we may find it difficult to concentrate, that we find it difficult to communicate, we may find it difficult to problem solve. We may then find ourselves needing to go to the toilet immediately, because what our body will do is let go of everything that it doesn't need in order to be able to fight or run. And also sometimes it can mean that we find it difficult to engage in relationships, because intimacy can be challenging. And I mean sexual intimacy, but I also mean the intimacy on an emotional level, to be able to connect and let your guard down and allow yourself to be seen. So on our nervous system, then it has a huge impact. And when those hormones are transmitted to our organs over a period of time, it can have quite a damaging effect, which is why we want to take a little bit of control back. So what may, actually, let me check where I am on, so why might people be feeling stressed right now as we are experiencing the pandemic and on lockdown? Well, first and foremost, I want to talk about the understandable response to feel stressed and anxious at this time. The actual threats to life, the threat that some people may feel to their business, to things that they've invested in. I know that when I came back to work in January after being on maternity leave, and I don't really feel like I got started before the lockdown happened, and I had to recreate ways in which to be able to still work. So, people's businesses have actually shut down. So there's an understandable, real threat that it may not be to life, but it may feel that way. People have cancelled weddings. People's holidays have been cancelled, and house purchases have fallen through. There's lots of reasons. You may have a loved one that's got underlying health issues. So there's a big reason that, that it's understandable. But what happens if it isn't? If you feel as though you fall into the category of it being an understandable response to feel stressed and anxious at the moment, you may experience that it's because of a lack of control. So I would encourage you to think about what you can control. And I'm going to take the example of, let's just say that you have a big event booked, like a wedding. Sometimes it's the not knowing that can create the anxiety and the stress, and then you start to ruminate about the what ifs and what you can do, and what if this happens and what if I don't do that. So I would encourage you to make a list of all the what ifs and explore what you can take control of. So it may mean that you make some decisions that you don't really favour, but that if you do it and you have a plan, like if I make that decision to cancel, for example, then, what options do I need to consider? Who do I need to call? Do I need to rearrange? these decisions aren't favourable, but it would take away the unknown, and these are things that you can control. As I start to explore these a little bit more, I think what stands out for me is that sometimes we don't want to do these, but it's a case of having to. That if you feel as though your stress and anxiety is becoming to an unmanageable or unhealthy level and it's having a negative impact, then think about the choices that you have throughout all of this that may not be favourable, but they may lead you down a more healthier path. It may make it more manageable until it's all over, until you feel like you're back on your feet. So think about the here and now. What do you need now? What decisions can you make now? Focus on what you know. So if you feel as though your emotions are heightened at the moment and it's because of the pandemic, because of all the unknowns, think about what you know, because sometimes when our emotions are heightened, they can feel so intense that we use them to assess our reality. They become almost more prominent to us than our cognitions, the things that we know. So if you're worried about loved ones, for example, think about what you know to be true. That whilst you may feel really unsafe and it may feel as though, they are not well already, it sometimes has to be a very explicit process to become connected with your internal dialogue. But the conversation that you have inside your head, that's where I would encourage you to go, and for you to develop a more nurturing internal dialogue. So think about what you know. Panic, panic, panic. But hang on. I know that I am abiding by the government guidelines. I know that I'm practicing social distancing. I know that today I'm well. I know that today my family, I've not heard anything to suggest. So bring yourself back to the present and focus on what you know. Another reason why people may be experiencing stress and anxiety at the moment is that the lockdown has taken away any external ways in which you may generally manage how okay you feel, or how you manage the challenges in life. That often you may be somebody that chooses to put things in a box and focus on other things. You may be a very positive thinker and you focus on positive things that you can leave the house and do in the morning before the pandemic. And what the lockdown has done is it's taken away our ability to do that. I find that speaking to the people that have had anxiety on a longer, before the pandemic and maybe, for a couple of years, is that what they're saying is that they feel more equipped to deal with this, that home is where their comfort is because of their safety behaviours more often than not. But if home and being on your own isn't where you necessarily feel most comfortable or safe, then the lockdown is going to create some really big challenges for you. So as we develop through our lives and as we grow and we have the interactions with our main attachment figures, but also, as we get older and we expand our social networks, we learn how to get our needs met and manage how okay we feel and the challenges that we experience. Now, we either have a stronger sense of internal resources, or we rely on external resources in order to feel okay. And if you are somebody that maybe thinks that you rely on external resources, then maybe that is what's creating the unsettled feeling that you have at the moment. Now, internal resources are things like that nurturing dialogue that I spoke about. So if you've got a problem or you're feeling vulnerable or you want some support, a nurturing dialogue would be kind of like, okay, take a breath. This is understandable. Your whole world is being rocked. Everything's just being taken away from you and you're feeling out of your depth. Who can you ring? is she likely to be available? Or are they likely to be available? No, but if they're not, they'll give me a call back. That's kind of a really nurturing dialogue, as opposed to, oh my God, will you just get a grip? Everyone's in this together. Like, you know, why all of a sudden are you not coping? So that's a really critical, toxic internal dialogue. So if you have strong senses of internal resources, you're more likely to have a nurturing dialogue, which would then enable you to seek support, which would then enable you to consider what it is that you need to feel okay, be it time out, movie on, food, whatever it is that floats your boat and makes you feel okay. You're more likely to be able to consider what those are, and then more likely to be able to give yourself it. Those that don't have a strong sense of internal resources will rely on the external resources more. So that might be the people that focus a lot on work. Work takes you away from yourself. It takes you away from your home and your family. And whilst that may sound like a real critical thing, I want you to remember what I said is that as we develop, we all survive in very different ways. And if your internal resources when growing up weren't nurtured or they weren't encouraged, you know, permission to cry, permission to feel, permission to be a pain in the butt while you was young, sometimes without that, can inhibit the development of the internal resources. So it's very creative that we're able then to look outside of ourselves and find the external resources to be able to access. And something, you know, might be school. Throw yourself into school, it's safe, you know exactly what's expected of you, there's very clear boundaries, you get praise, you get validation, that makes me feel good, gives me a sense of worth, but that's external. Similar to work as well. So sometimes I find that clients that are very disconnected from themselves work a lot of hours, and the challenge then is, how can we pull that back so that you can focus on yourself, because you clearly need to go to work? Which takes me back to that question, you know, kind of that somebody that I think it was replied to an email said that their work-life balance was really out of balance, and so they're really concerned about going back now. So that might be a reliance on an external resource. I'm just going to see if I can put a light on, because I'm noticing it's getting a lot darker. Something else may be to organise a lot of social engagements. So always being around people, always having somewhere to go. So, you know, really struggle to sit down and just relax or be on your own, enjoy your own company. If you live on your own during the lockdown, that's going to be a huge challenge. And your mind might start racing. You may find that due to being on your own, you are connecting with yourself, particularly some elements, maybe not all of them, your cognitions, your emotions, your physiology start to kind of feel a tension or become aware of the racing thoughts or the toxic dialogue that you may have. So if the external resources have been taken away, this is more likely to happen. So what if that's you then? So what if you're finding that you're not in the, understandable category, but that actually the forced lockdown and the lack of external resources to be able to access is what's impacting your stress and anxiety? Well, the way I see it is that you kind of have two choices at the moment. The first one would be, and this is if you feel strong enough and okay enough, is to take this as the cliche but opportunity to connect with yourself, start mind mapping, start kind of trying to figure out what's going on for you, what it may be that you need to attend to when the lockdown is over. But that's not going to be for everybody, because not everybody has the capacity. You may have young children at home. You still may be trying to work from home as well. So that isn't for everybody. And what I want to say is to be gentle with yourself if you do try that. There is no quick fix to any of this. It's going to take time. If you're somebody that has relied on external resources in order to be able to feel okay and to feel grounded and to feel calm or worthwhile, then developing your internal resources is going to take some time. But that is a choice. It is something that you have, and it may be that you choose to access and work with somebody like me. I know that all the therapists that I am in groups with or that I trained with are all working online at the moment. So that kind of support is available. And if you don't feel that that is for you at the moment, then I think the other choice would be to create some external resources. So you need to look for things to do. You need to, and again, these may not be favourable, but the things that I came up with when I started thinking this is, like the jobs around the house, or sorting that drawer out that we all have in the kitchen that falls out or stops you from being able to open it because it's absolutely full of junk. Or you may have piled your letters in a corner for a period of time. But it's a really laborious, I wasn't able to think of anything exciting necessarily to keep you busy while we're in lockdown, but the things that you could be doing, and you could give yourself a list, and it can be things that take your mind off things. They're the two choices that I see us having if you aren't able to do the nurturing, self-soothing things. Before I go, so I'm going to get to you. I've seen your question, Danny. I'll get to it before we finish. What I want to say as well, and now that I've just acknowledged your question, that's just gone out of my head. Yes. So something that is also missing from going out and seeing friends and going to work is a lot of the hormone releases that are good for us. So I mentioned the adrenaline and the cortisol. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious, that's going to be in your system. That you may be hyper aware of your body. So you're doing a little bit of scanning and you're thinking, what is that? What's going on with me? What's happening? You may be attaching some negative meaning to that. This means that when it comes to going back to work, I'm not going to be able to do it, or I'm going to struggle to go to the shop. If that's the case, I want you to think about endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, the things that make us feel good. And I want you to think and research, if necessary, the things that would help you release that, because going out to work and seeing friends would routinely give you injections of those hormones, the laugh, the fun, the banter that you may have in the office. They're all releasing these hormones naturally without you even having to think about it. And now that we're in lockdown, we are without. So unless, again, this may not be favourable and it may feel really out of your comfort zone, but I was speaking to somebody online and saying, maybe it's about using the video calls that we all can have access on our phones now, and sitting and having your tea with somebody that may feel a little bit cringe. But unless you try it, how do you know whether it's going to have a positive impact on you or not, on what it's going to be like? So the laughter, the getting out and using exercise, the walk, or the being able to leave the house once a day. Try and use it and get as much as you can from that. So whether it's you want to get your heart rate pumping for good reason, for good healthy reasons, not the stress and the anxiety sense, to release endorphins, then use it for that. But it may also be that you take a walk and you really focus on using your senses. So you think about you notice what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell. Really focus on tastes, but not just notice, but really heighten your awareness and your focus on it. When I do this in my office, I often say to a client, look at my vase, which we use for water. Tell me what you can see. And, sometimes it's just a case of water and the seam down the glass, the table through the bottom, kind of really basic stuff. But when I ask them to really focus, then they start to see some like a print in the glass. Then they notice that it has lots of water stains. There is a chip in the top. It hasn't, because I don't think I'd use it, but things like that. So you've got to really fine tune your senses to be able to get some of the releases that going to work and maintain our social engagements would naturally, without us even having to think about, would provide us with. So I'm going to go back to the questions, cover those, and then I'm going to get to yours, Danny. So for somebody that has had anxiety and now you feel as though this period in lockdown is going to make you, or to undo what you know, I would suggest that you be really mindful about what you know. So when I say about, sometimes the emotions can heighten to such a degree that we lose connection with our own reality, in a sense. So, and sometimes these exercises need to be really explicit, written down, verbalized, discussed with a partner or a friend or something, so that it really helps you kind of get your teeth stuck into it. That's why therapy is really good, because it's really good to have someone to confront you and say, yeah, but how come? Where's your evidence for that? When you were sick for that 3 months, did you have the problem going out and going to the shop then? Sometimes we need to be our own personal investigators as well. So I would suggest focusing on what you know. You can forget what you know and what you've learned in therapy already. If you are someone like this person that contacted me and said that mainly doing okay, so how come anxiety comes and gets me from nowhere, then I think that is about you being disconnected with parts of yourself. So when I break it down into the 4, your cognitions, your emotions, your physiology, so your sensations in your body, and your behaviours lesser, but kind of those 3 mainly. And I think that whenever I'm working with somebody and the anxiety spikes, I really encourage, what clients want to do is run away from it, because their belief system is that this isn't okay, something's going to happen. So they attach very negative beliefs to the experience of anxiety, and they want to leave, they want to deny, turn their back on it, put it in a box. But I always encourage, and again, be gentle and pace this and be as safe as possible, for you to connect with it more. Now that can feel like a challenge, because it initially, well, isn't that going to increase my panic, for example? But if you do this gently and you do it, maybe mind mapping and something like that, think about what's going on. Think about the symptoms. Like, is there anything else that you could have been aware of before you got heightened and you felt actually anxious? Was there a tension in your jaw? Was it that I was noticing that you are becoming a little bit more emotional? There's lots of signs, but if you've lost connection, what our bodies wonderfully do, and many of you and my clients disagree that it's not so wonderful when your body forces you to stop through anxiety, but it makes us stop. Anxiety is a message from your body. Listen to me, because I'm going to start causing problems unless you attend to me and give you, your body, what you need. So yeah, I would suggest that if it comes from nowhere, it never comes from nowhere. Anxiety comes from thoughts, negative thought patterns and belief systems. So start to explore those parts of yourself. And if you, like this person that replied to the email, think that your life was way off balance, I would make, similar to a business plan, I'd make a life plan. I'd consider what you have discovered that you like about the lockdown. What is it about this pace of life that serves you well? And what is it about the life before lockdown that doesn't serve you well? And what is within your control? How can you make small changes? Small changes will have a big impact, and lots of small changes together make a big change. We all have to go out to work. We don't all need to be social animals that we may have been before the lockdown. So there are areas that you may be able to reclaim back, because when you start to slow down the process of life, your connection with yourself, you start to notice more. And when you notice more, that is the awareness then that you can filter through to your behaviour. And that's where the change happens. So I'm going to go to Danny's question. How can you improve your internal nurturing dialogue? Great question. So I think first and foremost, it's about being aware of it. And then I would be curious about where that internal dialogue has come from. So in transactional analysis, which is what I studied, the idea is that we have three ego states. We have a parent, an adult, and a child ego state. And so whenever we're in relation with somebody, we are coming from either a parental place, an adult place, or a childlike place. Our internal dialogue, in essence, is how our parent place speaks to our childlike place inside of us. And it's, there's good things to that because it keeps us safe. So when we tell ourselves that we shouldn't, or that's an idiotic thing to do, that's a little conversation between your parent part and your child part that's kind of talking you out of it and keeping you safe. So social norms, that's we have that little internal dialogue. So there's positive aspects of that. But if it's toxic, the parental part of ourselves often is almost swallowed whole through the parent attachments that we've had in our life. So they're actual physical parents, foster carers, adoptive parents, biological parents, teachers, grandparents, Auntie Susan, that was never really an auntie, but we called auntie. So, we take things, the way that they interacted with us and the meaning that they had in the world that they filtered through. So it may be that if you find that you're really critical, that you had quite a critical parent that maybe did shame you if you kicked up a fuss and cried, what's that pathetic face about? Or, you're just embarrassing yourself. Will you give it a rest? That's we swallow that. We make meaning as, and not consciously at all, but unless we're aware of it, it's almost like we swallow it whole. And then sometimes we give it out to other people, less so though. We're often more kinder to people than we are to ourselves, but that we then start to play that on repeat, and we tell ourselves, we almost like maintain that message from the actual parent and replay and maintain it in ourselves. And these messages haven't always been verbal. It might be something that we witness and therefore we interpret, and we may interpret it right and we may interpret it wrongly. But if we've done the whole if we've swallowed it whole and we find that it is part of our internal dialogue, it's kind of like, why would I think like that there? And see where it comes from. And then once you're able to identify where it comes from, how do you want it to sound? And it's about being mindful of it. When you find that you're getting into a critical dialogue or you're giving yourself a hard time, it's almost like press the pause button. And again, really explicit. It may be that you need to verbalize it or write it down. What am I saying to myself? Okay, how useful is that? That element is quite useful, but that's awful. What do I want to say to myself when I'm tired and on my knees and don't feel like I can get up and, be social animal that everybody's expecting me to be? What do I need to hear myself say? And honestly, Danny, it's just a case of creating new patterns, confronting your belief systems, but being aware of where that dialogue comes from. So I hope you find that helpful. We've been on a little bit longer than half an hour. So if anyone's got any questions, just or feedback, pop them in the messages for me. I'll stick around. I can't hear no crying baby, so it's still good to stay. What I'm going to do as well is I'll comment on this once it's been posted on the page with some blogs that I've previously written that you may find useful. Good, I'm glad. Right then, Alexia, Danny, Ingrid, Carol, Claire, Kim. Have I said Richard? thank you for joining me for the first week. Hopefully I'll be back soon and confirm that we can have an interview with Sari next week. That would be great. You're welcome, Stella. All right, so if that's it, you're welcome. That's over and out from me then. So take care of yourselves. If you've got any questions that come when you're doing your reflection on this, then please don't hesitate. If you received a newsletter, reply to any of those. You can just direct message me through the page. That's absolutely fine. I can't promise I'm going to get back to you quickly because life is super chaotic at the moment with not a dedicated time to work. You're welcome, Emma. And thank you, Claire. Right, take care of yourselves and hopefully I shall see you again next week. Take care. Bye.